I died on my 38th birthday, alone in a studio apartment I could barely afford, staring at another collections notice for student loans that had never been mine. The last thing I remembered was the bitter taste of sleeping pills dissolving on my tongue, the weight of $200,000 in debt crushing my chest like a physical thing, and my sister Madison's Instagram post glowing on my phone screen, her and her tech CEO husband on a yacht in the Mediterranean, champagne glasses raised, her Harvard MBA hanging framed in the background of their penthouse. The degree I'd paid for, the life I'd funded, the future I'd destroyed myself to give her. Then I woke up in my childhood bedroom, 20 years old again, staring at my mother's face hovering over me with that exact expression I'd learned to dread, the one that said she needed something and I was going to give it to her whether I wanted to or not. Jessica, wake up. We need to talk about Madison's future. My heart stopped. I knew this moment. I'd lived it before. It was the summer before Madison's freshman year at Columbia. The summer my parents sat me down at the kitchen table, me, fresh out of my state school with a biology degree and my first job as a lab technician making $35,000 a year, and explained that Madison, their precious baby, their brilliant star, needed me to co-sign her student loans because their credit was maxed out and she'd lose her spot at her dream school without immediate funding. I sat up slowly, taking in my childhood bedroom with new eyes, the same floral wallpaper I'd begged Mom to let me paint over when I was 16, the same twin bed with the sagging mattress, the same cheap particle board desk where I'd done homework by lamplight while Madison watched TV in the living room on the big screen Dad had bought her for Christmas. Even my body felt different, lighter. 20 years of stress hadn't carved lines into my face yet. My joints didn't ache, from years of working double shifts and skipping proper meals. My hands were smooth, not rough from laboratory chemicals and desperate budgeting. Jessica, are you listening to me? Mom's voice had that edge to it, the one that said she was already annoyed that I wasn't immediately agreeing. I'm listening, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. You want to talk about Madison's future? Yes, come downstairs. Your father and I need to discuss something important with you. She left, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. I could hear the murmur of voices below, Dad's deeper rumble, Madison's higher-pitched whine about something. For a long moment, I just sat there, trying to process the impossibility of what had happened. Rebirth, time travel. A second chance. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was here now, with full knowledge of everything that was about to happen. I knew that in 3 months, Apple would release a new product line that would send their stock soaring. I knew that a little-known company called Tesla was about to revolutionize the electric car market. I knew that something called Bitcoin would emerge and make early investors into millionaires. I knew which neighborhoods would gentrify, which companies would boom, which investments would pay off. But more than that, I knew exactly what would happen if I walked downstairs and signed those papers. 15 years of hell. 15 years of working myself to the bone while Madison partied through an overpriced education she barely valued. 15 years of watching my credit score plummet, my wages garnished, my hopes for a house or a family or any kind of financial stability evaporate like morning mist. 15 years of being told I was selfish for complaining, for asking Madison to contribute, for suggesting that maybe, just maybe, she should get a real job instead of finding herself on my dime. 15 years that ended with me swallowing pills, in a studio apartment, alone and broken and completely out of options. Jessica! Dad's voice boomed up the stairs. Don't make us wait! I stood up, catching sight of myself in the mirror over my dresser. 20 years old, clear skin, bright eyes, a whole future ahead of me. Not this time, I thought. This time, I'm choosing me. I walked downstairs to find them all waiting in the kitchen. Dad at the head of the table, still in his work clothes from his job at the insurance company. Mom standing by the counter, her arms crossed. Madison sitting in her usual spot, filing her nails with that bored expression she'd perfected by age 12. Finally, Madison muttered. Some of us have places to be. Where? I asked, genuine curiosity making me speak before I thought better of it. Your freshman orientation isn't for another month. She rolled her eyes. I'm meeting Tiffany and Bryce at the mall. We're shopping for my dorm room. With whose money? I wanted to ask, but I already knew the answer. Mom and Dad's credit cards, maxed out and creaking under the weight of Madison's endless wants. Sit down, Jessica, Dad said, gesturing to the chair across from Madison. We need to discuss something as a family. I sat, keeping my face neutral even as my heart raced. This was it, the moment that had defined the next 18 years of my first life. Dad cleared his throat, pulling out a folder I recognized, the one with all of Madison's college paperwork. As you know, Madison's been accepted to Columbia University. It's a tremendous opportunity for her, a top-tier school that will open doors for her future. Congratulations, I said to Madison, who didn't look up from her nails. The thing is, Mom jumped in, her voice taking on that wheedling tone I'd learned to dread. The financial aid package isn't quite enough to cover everything. And with the expenses we've had lately, we're tapped out, Dad said bluntly. Our credit cards are maxed. We've got a second mortgage on the house. We can't take on any more debt. I waited, saying nothing. But Madison can't lose this opportunity, Mom continued. She's worked so hard for this. Had she, I wondered? Madison had spent high school attending parties, joining clubs for her resume without actually participating, and paying for test prep courses that I'd never been offered. I'd gotten into college on academic scholarships and my own merits. Madison had gotten into Columbia because my parents had paid for every advantage money could buy. So we found a solution, Dad said, and I watched him slide papers across the table toward me. Private student loans. They have better interest rates than the federal loans, and the payments don't start until 6 months after graduation. And, I prompted, even though I knew what was coming. And they require a cosigner, Mom said. Someone with good credit and a stable job. All three of them looked at me. You want me to cosign Madison's student loans, I said flatly. It's just a formality, Dad assured me, using the exact words I remembered. Madison's going to have an economics degree from Columbia. She'll get a high-paying job right out of school. She'll make the payments, no problem. And if she doesn't? Mom's face pinched. Why would you even say something like that? Don't you believe in your sister? I believe in reading contracts before signing them, I said calmly. If I co-sign, I'm equally responsible for the debt. If Madison doesn't pay, they come after me. She'll pay, Dad said firmly. Won't you, Madison? Madison finally looked up from her nails, shrugging. Obviously, I'm going to be making bank after I graduate. This is Columbia we're talking about. Bank. She had no idea what she wanted to do with her degree, no plan for after graduation, no concept of how the real world worked, but she was confident she'd be making bank. I looked at the papers, $200,000 in private, loans at 7.5% interest, payments of $2,800 per month starting 6 months after graduation. My name listed as primary borrower because I was the one with the job and the credit score. In my first life, I'd signed without really reading. I'd trusted my parents when they said it was temporary. I'd believed Madison when she'd promised to pay. I'd been such a fool. No, I said. The kitchen went silent. What? Mom asked, as if she couldn't have possibly heard me correctly. I said no, I'm not co-signing. Dad's face darkened. Jessica, don't be ridiculous. This is your sister's future we're talking about. And mine, I shot back. My credit, my financial future, my risk. It's not a risk if Madison pays. But if she doesn't, I'm stuck with $200,000 in debt on a $35,000 salary. I pushed the papers back across the table. That's more than 5 times my annual income. The payments alone would be almost my entire take-home pay. You're being dramatic, Mom said, but her voice was uncertain now. Madison's going to pay, and even if there were some temporary issues, you could afford to help your sister. No, I can't. I can barely afford my own rent and student loans. I stood up, my chair scraping against the linoleum. The answer is no. Madison can take out federal loans like everyone else. Or you and Dad can rebuild your credit and co-sign. Or she can go to a state school that's more affordable, but I'm not signing. How can you be so selfish? Madison's voice was sharp, angry. I got into Columbia. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know what kind of opportunity this is? Then you should value it enough to take financial responsibility for it. I'm 18, she shrieked. I don't have a job. I don't have credit. How am I supposed to figure it out? I said coldly. The same way I did when you guys spent my college fund on your private school tuition. The same way I did when I worked 3 jobs to afford community college. The same way I've done everything in my life on my own. We gave you a roof over your head, Dad said, his voice rising. We fed you, clothed you, raised you. The legal minimum, I interrupted. You did the bare minimum required by law, and you act like I should be grateful. Meanwhile, Madison got private tutors, SAT prep, a car for her 16th birthday, a laptop, spending money. We did the best we could with what we had. Mom's face was flushed red now. We had 2 daughters to raise, and you chose to invest everything in one of them. I grabbed my purse from the counter. That's fine, that's your choice. But you don't get to be surprised when the other one refuses to bankrupt herself to subsidize your golden child. If you don't do this, Dad said, and his voice had gone quiet and dangerous, you're out of this family. Do you understand me? You'll be on your own. I'd heard these exact words in my first life. They'd broken something. Inside me, that threat of abandonment. I'd signed the papers within the hour, desperate to keep my family, terrified of being alone. Now I smiled. Promise? I asked. I walked out of the house that day and never looked back. Well, that's not entirely true. I went back the following weekend with Reese, my best friend from high school, to get my stuff. Mom and Dad weren't home. I'd timed it that way deliberately. Only Madison was there, sunbathing in the backyard with her headphones in. She didn't even notice me loading boxes into Reese's car. Are you sure about this? Reese asked, carrying out a box of my books. I mean, they're your family. They were, I corrected. Now they're just people I'm related to. That's cold, Jess. That's survival. Reese didn't understand. She came from a normal family where parents loved their children equally, where siblings supported each other, where money wasn't used as a weapon and love wasn't conditional on compliance. She thought it was being harsh, that I'd regret this. She didn't know I'd already lived the alternative. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in a not great part of town, the kind of place where you could hear your neighbors' arguments through the walls and the hallway always smelled like weed and old cooking oil. But it was mine. My name on the lease, my rules, my life. And I had a plan. The $12,000 I'd saved for a car went straight into a trading account I opened that first week. I spent hours at the public library, researching, planning, remembering everything I could from my first life about market trends and stock prices. Amazon was trading at $89 per share. In 10 years, it would be worth over $1,800 per share. I put $4,000 into Amazon stock. Apple was at $45 per share, about to release the iPhone. Another $3,000 there. The rest I spread across carefully selected tech stocks and an emerging electric car company called Tesla that most people thought was crazy. Then I picked up every shift I could at my lab tech job. I made $35,000 a year, which wasn't much, but it was enough if I was careful. Ramen for dinner most nights. No cable, no car, no luxuries. Every spare penny went into my investment accounts. I also started watching the housing market like a hawk. I knew which neighborhoods were about to explode in value. I knew where the city was planning new developments. I knew which rundown areas would be trendy in 5 years. I just needed capital. For the first 3 months, I heard nothing from my family. No calls, no texts, no drive-bys to check if I was okay. I'd been disowned after all, dead to them. Reese kept me updated through the church gossip network. Apparently, Dad had mortgaged the house after all, pulling equity to pay for Madison's first year at Columbia directly. Mom had picked up extra shifts at her part-time job at the department store. They were struggling, but determined to give their baby girl her dream. Your mom looks tired, Reese told me over coffee one Saturday morning. Really tired. Like she's aged 10 years in 3 months. That's what happens when you financially overextend yourself for status, I said, not looking up from my laptop where I was tracking my portfolio. Jess, come on, she's your mom. She made her choice. I clicked to another tab. checking housing listings in the neighborhood I knew was about to boom. I'm just living with it. You're really not going to forgive them? I looked at Reese then, really looked at her. Sweet, naive Reese who'd never known what it was like to be the spare child. The backup plan, the one who existed to serve someone else's dreams. Forgiveness isn't the issue, I said quietly. I'm not angry at them, I'm just done. That's worse, somehow. Maybe it was, but anger would have kept me connected to them, tied up in their drama. This cold clarity, this clean cut, this was freedom. Madison started at Columbia that fall. I saw her posts on Instagram. I hadn't blocked her yet, morbidly curious about what I was missing. Photos of her dorm room decorated with expensive bedding and designer posters. Pictures of her at orientation events, at parties, at football games, always smiling, always surrounded by people, always living her best life. My best friend from Columbia. Blessed sisters from another mister. Dorm life living the dream. Future economist. I wondered if she ever thought about me. Probably not. I'd served my purpose by refusing. Now I was just an unfortunate memory, the selfish older sister who wouldn't help family. I didn't comment, didn't like, just watched from a distance as she burned through my parents' money and built a life I'd never been offered. Meanwhile, I was eating dollar store pasta in my studio apartment and watching my investment portfolio grow by 20% in 6 months. Priorities. By the end of Madison's freshman year, my initial $12,000 had grown to almost $20,000. I immediately invested the gains, compounding my returns. I also started researching rental property investment, studying landlord laws and mortgage options and everything I could about real estate. That summer, I got a raise at work, $5,000 more a year, bringing me to $40,000. It wasn't much, but combined with my growing portfolio, it felt like wealth. I'd never had breathing room before. Every cent in my first life had gone to those damn loan payments. Now I was building something. Madison came home that summer looking different, highlighting her hair, wearing designer clothes I knew she couldn't afford. She'd gained the freshman 15 and then some, her face rounder, her clothes tighter. I knew this from Reese, of course. I didn't actually see my family, but the church gossip network was better than any spy agency. Your sister's got a boyfriend, Reese reported dutifully. Some guy named Chad who's in a fraternity. Your mom seems thrilled. Of course she is. Yesi, I muttered. Madison could bring home a serial killer and Mom would be planning the wedding. That's harsh. That's accurate. I was working 60-hour weeks that summer, picking up overtime and side projects. I was also studying, constantly learning about finance and investment and market analysis. I fell asleep most nights with books on economics and real estate spread across my bed. I had a goal, my first property by age 25. That gave me 5 years to build enough capital for a down payment. In my first life, I'd been 38 and still renting, never able to save enough for even a starter home because every spare cent had gone to Madison's loans, not this time. I was 21 when I first saw my family again. It was at the grocery store, one of those chance encounters you can't avoid in a small city. I was in line with a basket of budget staples when I heard Mom's voice behind me. Jessica? I turned slowly. Mom looked older, her hair grayer than I remembered, her face lined with stress. She was wearing her work uniform, still at the department store apparently. Her cart was full of budget items too. Cheaper cuts of meat, store brand everything. Mom, that's I said neutrally. I didn't know you still lived in town. I do. An awkward silence stretched between us. The cashier was watching with undisguised interest. Small-town grocery stores were the worst for privacy. How are you? Mom finally asked. Been fine, you? We're managing. She glanced at my basket and I saw her cataloging the cheap items, the careful budgeting. Maybe looking for signs that I was struggling, that I'd learned my lesson about defying family. Instead, I was wearing decent clothes I'd bought at a thrift store, my hair professionally cut at a discount salon, my nails clean and shaped. I looked put together, healthy, fine. Madison's doing well at Columbia, Mom offered. Dean's list last semester. That was a lie. I'd looked up the Dean's list online. Madison wasn't on it, but I didn't call her out. That's nice, I said instead. She's thinking about joining a sorority, A good one. More money, of course. Good for her. The cashier called me forward. I paid for my groceries, aware of Mom watching me count out exact change. Not because I had to, but because I was accounting for every dollar, building towards something bigger. Jessica, Mom said as I picked up my bags, we could what? We could talk sometime. Maybe get coffee? Maybe, I said, knowing I wouldn't. I walked out of the store and didn't look back. That night, Reese called. Your mom called my mom. She's upset that you wouldn't talk to her. I did talk to her. You know what I mean, real talk, family talk. We're not family anymore, I reminded her. Dad made that clear. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. He meant it, I interrupted. And so did I when I walked out. This isn't a fight. Reese, this isn't some temporary falling out. This is permanent. That's so sad. That's so freeing, I corrected. But after I hung up, I sat in my studio apartment and stared at the wall for a long time, thinking about the mom I'd wanted versus the mom I'd had. The family I'd needed versus the family I'd gotten. In my first life, I'd died thinking I'd failed them. Now I knew the truth. They'd failed me first. Madison's sophomore year rolled around, and with it came new Instagram posts. She'd joined the sorority, one of the most expensive on campus. More photos of parties, formals, sisterhood events, designer dresses, professional photos, spring break in Cabo. My parents went deeper into debt. I bought my first $1,000 of Bitcoin at $0.75 per coin. The thing about knowing the future was that it made wealth accumulation almost trivial. While everyone else was gambling on maybes, I was investing in certainties. I knew Amazon would dominate. I knew Tesla would revolutionize transportation. I knew Bitcoin would explode, but it still took discipline. I still had to live cheap, work hard, delay gratification. The difference was that I knew it would pay off. Every day I didn't spend money on Madison's debt was a day I could invest in my future. Every overtime shift I picked up was more capital for my portfolio. Every night I stayed home instead of going out was money in the bank. I was 22 when my portfolio hit $50,000. I was 23 when I quit my lab tech job for a research coordinator position at a pharmaceutical company that paid $60,000 a year. I was 24 when I made my first property purchase. It was a small 2-bedroom condo in a neighborhood most people avoided. Too urban, too mixed income, too uncertain. But I knew. I'd lived through this once before. In 5 years, this neighborhood would be the hottest real estate market in the city. Artists would move in, then coffee shops, then young professionals, then boutiques. Gentrification would sweep through like a tsunami, and property values would triple. I paid $40,000 down and mortgaged the rest. The mortgage was $1,200 a month, but I immediately found a tenant willing to pay $1,500 to live there. $300 a month profit, plus the equity I was building, plus the appreciation I knew was coming. My first step toward real wealth. Madison graduated from Columbia that same year. I knew because Reese showed me the Facebook posts. Madison in her cap and gown, my parents flanking her, all of them smiling for the camera. The photos were professionally done, another expense they couldn't afford. Congratulations to our brilliant daughter on her graduation from Columbia University. We're so proud. Hashtag Columbia grad, hashtag proud parents, hashtag future leader. The comments were full of congratulations and praise. I scrolled through them, feeling nothing. What I didn't see on Facebook, Madison's actual GPA, 2.8. Madison's job prospects, none. She'd spent 4 years partying instead of networking. Madison's plan for the future, she was taking time to figure things out. What I also didn't see, the massive loan payments coming due in 6 months. But I knew. I'd lived this before. I went about my life, working my new job, managing my rental property, building my portfolio. I was dating casually, nothing serious. I was making real friends at work, people who didn't know my history or my family drama. I was seeing a therapist once a week, processing the complicated trauma of living your life twice. I was happy, genuinely happy. And then the messages started. The first one came from a number I didn't recognize. Jess, it's Madison. I got your number from Reese. Can we talk? I deleted it. The second one came 2 days later. Please, Jess, I know we haven't talked in years, but I really need advice. You're good with money, and I'm trying to figure out this job search thing. Deleted. The third one was more desperate. Why are you ignoring me? I'm your sister. I just need help. I blocked the number. Then came the emails, the Facebook messages, the Instagram DMs. Madison was persistent. I'd give her that. Each message was the same general theme. She needed help. She missed me. Couldn't I just talk to her? Family should stick together. Never once did she apologize for the 4 years of silence. Never once did she acknowledge that our parents had disowned me and she'd been fine with it. Never once did she seem to understand that she'd chosen her comfortable life over a relationship with me. She just wanted something. Again, I blocked her on everything and changed my phone number. 6 months after graduation, the loan payments came due. I heard about it through Reese, of course. Madison had moved back home, unable to find a job that paid enough to cover both rent and loan payments. She was applying to positions but bombing the interviews. Turns out a 2.8 GPA and no relevant experience didn't impress employers, even with an Ivy League name on the resume. My parents were panicking. The payments on their mortgage, plus the private loans, plus their own debt, was crushing them. Dad picked up a weekend job delivering pizzas. Mom took on extra shifts. They were drowning. Madison was networking at expensive clubs and building her brand on social media. Some things never changed. I bought my second property that year, another condo in the same neighborhood, this one a foreclosure I got for a steal. I put 20% down and rented it out immediately for profit. 2 properties, 2 income streams, plus my day job, plus my investment portfolio, which had now grown to over $100,000. I was 25 years old and well on my way to financial independence. Madison was 22 and still unemployed. The breaking point came 3 months later. I was at a coffee shop near my office, working on my laptop during my lunch break, when someone sat down across from me. I looked up to find Madison. She looked awful. Her expensive highlights had grown out, showing mousy brown roots. Her designer clothes were wrinkled and didn't fit quite right anymore. She'd gained more weight. Stress eating, probably. Her makeup was smudged like she'd been crying. Don't, I said immediately, starting to pack up my laptop. Please, Jess, just 5 minutes. I don't have 5 minutes. I'm drowning here. Her voice cracked, loud enough that other customers looked over. The loans, the payments are eating us alive. Mom and Dad are working themselves to death. I can't find a job that pays enough. We're going to lose the house. Not my problem. How can you say that? We're family. I laughed, harsh and bitter. No, we're not. Remember? Dad disowned me when I wouldn't co-sign your loans. You were fine with that. You went off to your fancy school and didn't give me a second thought for 4 years. I was young. You were selfish. You still are. I stood up, slinging my bag over my shoulder. You didn't reach out when I moved out. You didn't text on my birthday. You didn't call on Christmas. You didn't give a single shit about me until you needed something. Again. I'm sorry. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. I'm sorry I was a bad sister. I'm sorry I took you for granted, but please, I need help. Just this once. Help yourself, I said coldly. Get a real job, any job. Stop waiting for your dream position and start working retail or food service or whatever you can find. Make the payments. Take responsibility. I can't, she wailed. The payments are $2,800 a month. I'd need to make like $60,000 a year to afford that plus living expenses. Then you shouldn't have borrowed $200,000 for a degree you didn't take seriously. I didn't understand. You understood perfectly. You just didn't care because you thought other people would cover your mistakes. You thought Mom and Dad would handle it. You thought I'd cave eventually. You thought someone would always be there to save you. I leaned down, looking her dead in the eye. Well, guess what, Madison? I'm not saving you. I'm not even throwing you a rope. You made this mess. You drown in it. I walked out of the coffee shop and left her sobbing at the table. It should have felt cruel. It felt like liberation. That night, I celebrated my 26th birthday alone in my 1-bedroom apartment. I'd upgraded from the studio with a bottle of wine and a spreadsheet of my assets. Property value, $140,000. I owned 2 units now worth 70K each, up from my purchase prices. Equity, $45,000. After mortgages, investment portfolio, $125,000, thanks to Amazon, Apple, and Tesla stock splits. Retirement account, $15,000. Cash savings, $10,000. Total net worth, $195,000. In my first life, I'd been 26 and negative $87,000 in the hole, drowning in Madison's debt with no end in sight. The difference was staggering. I was building wealth while Madison destroyed it. I was creating a future while she fumbled hers. I was thriving while they suffered. And I didn't feel guilty about it at all. The next few years passed in a blur of strategic investments and careful planning. I knew exactly what was coming. The 2008 financial crisis, the housing market crash, the recovery boom. I positioned myself perfectly. When the market crashed, I was ready. I'd sold my more volatile stocks and moved into bonds and cash equivalents. While everyone else panicked, I waited. Then, when housing prices bottomed out and foreclosures flooded the market, I struck. I bought 5 properties in 2 years, all foreclosures, all in neighborhoods I knew would recover and gentrify. I put down 20% on each, mortgaged the rest, and immediately rented them out. By the time I was 29, I owned 7 properties. My rental income covered all. My mortgages plus gave me $3,000 a month in profit. My day job paid for my living expenses. Everything else went into investments. My portfolio had hit $500,000. I was, by any reasonable standard, wealthy, and my family was falling apart. The house went into foreclosure when I was 28. I heard about it through Reese, who heard about it from the church ladies, who'd heard about it from the bank officer who went to their congregation. Small towns, everyone knows everything. Apparently, my parents had missed 3 mortgage payments in a row. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. They had 60 days to catch up, or they'd lose the house they'd lived in for 30 years. Madison was still living with them, still unemployed in any meaningful sense. She'd had a series of retail and food service jobs, but never lasted more than a few months before quitting, because the work was beneath her, or her manager was disrespectful, or the customers were degrading. She'd never made a single payment on her student loans. The entire $200,000 debt was in default, and since my parents had co-signed on the private loans and put up the house as collateral, the bank was coming for everything. "Your mom looks terrible," Reese told me over drinks one evening. "She's aged like 20 years. Your dad, too. They're both working multiple jobs, but they just can't catch up." "Unfortunate," I said, sipping my Manhattan. We were at a nice bar in the revitalized downtown, the same area I owned 3 properties in, now worth triple what I'd paid. "Jess, they're going to be homeless." "They'll figure it out. Apartment, downsizing, moving in with relatives. People lose houses every day." "Your sister tried to apply for loan forgiveness but got denied." "Something about the type of loans she took out." "Private loans aren't eligible for federal forgiveness programs," I explained patiently. "That's why federal loans are safer. Lower interest rates, more flexible repayment options, forgiveness programs. But the borrowing limits are lower, which is why Madison needed private loans for the full Columbia tuition." Reese stared at me. "You knew this. Back when they asked you to co-sign, you knew all of this." "I did my research before refusing to sign, yes." "And you didn't warn them?" "They didn't ask my opinion. They demanded my signature." I finished my drink and signaled for another. "There's a difference." "I don't know how you can be so cold about this." "Practice," I said simply. The house sold at auction for less than they owed. My parents walked away with nothing. No equity, no savings, just debt and ruined credit. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town. The same complex where I'd lived in my first life, actually. I drove past it once, recognizing the peeling paint and broken playground equipment. Madison moved in with them. All 3 of them crammed into a space barely big enough for one. I bought another property that same month. A gorgeous 4-bedroom house in the suburbs that I knew would appreciate by 200% in the next 5 years. I was 30 years old and worth just over $1 million. My parents were 62 and 63, broke and broken. Madison was 27 and still had no career, no prospects, no plan. Sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd think about my first life, about the despair, the hopelessness, the crushing weight of debt I'd never asked for. I'd think about Madison's Instagram posts from yachts while I ate ramen in my studio. I'd think about my mother saying I was selfish for asking my sister to contribute to her own debt. I'd think about my father disowning me for refusing to destroy myself to save them. And I'd feel nothing but satisfaction that they were finally experiencing the consequences of their own choices. Was I cruel? Probably. Was I wrong? I didn't think so. They'd chosen Madison over me, money over family, appearance over substance. They'd made their bed with expensive sheets and silk pillowcases, all purchased on credit they couldn't afford. Now they got to lie in it. I went to therapy twice a week by then. My therapist, Dr. Chen, was fascinated by my situation. You describe your family's suffering with complete detachment, she observed during one session. No anger, no grief, no satisfaction, just nothing. Is that bad? It's interesting. Most people in your situation would feel something. Anger at the injustice, grief over the lost relationships, even schadenfreude at their downfall. I felt all of that already, I explained. In my first life, I felt it so deeply it killed me. I don't have any emotion left for them now. So this is protective? This is survival. Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair, studying me. You're aware that what you're describing, living life twice, knowing the future, isn't possible, right? I'm aware of what's supposed to be possible, yes. And yet you maintain this narrative of rebirth. Because it's true. Whether you believe it or not doesn't change what I know. She made a note. The alternative explanation would be that you experienced a significant psychotic break, possibly brought on by trauma from your family situation, and constructed this elaborate delusion to justify cutting them off. Is that what you think? I think you're one of the most psychologically resilient people I've ever met, Dr. Chen said. Whether your memories of a previous life are literal truth or metaphorical truth doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you've used that framework to completely restructure your relationship with your family and build a successful, independent life. So I'm functional crazy? She smiled. You're functional, period. The rest is just flavor. I liked Dr. Chen. My 32nd birthday came and went quietly. I was dating someone by then Marcus, a software engineer I'd met at a networking event. He was kind, successful, completely unconnected to my family drama. We'd been together for 6 months, long enough that he was starting to ask about meeting my family. I don't really have a family, I told him over dinner at a restaurant I never could have afforded in my first life. Everyone has a family. Not me. I have biological relatives I don't speak to. He set down his fork, looking concerned. What happened? I gave him the abbreviated version. Golden child sister, financial manipulation, ultimatum, estrangement. And you haven't spoken to them in 12 years? 12 years, no. Seen them at a distance occasionally because it's a small city, but no actual conversations. Don't you miss them? I miss the family I wanted to have, I admitted. But I don't miss the family I actually had. Marcus reached across the table, taking my hand. That must be lonely. I have friends. I have you. I have a full life. But no family. Family is supposed to love you unconditionally, I said. Mine loved me conditionally, on the condition that I sacrifice myself for my sister. When I stopped meeting that condition, I stopped being family. So no, I don't miss them. I miss a fantasy that never existed. He squeezed my hand but didn't push further. Marcus and I broke up 3 months later, but not because of my family issues. He got a job offer in California and wanted to take it. I had too much invested in this city, literally, to follow him. We parted amicably. I didn't cry. I was done crying over things I couldn't change. I was 33 when I saw Madison again. I was at Whole Foods, shopping for groceries I could finally afford without budgeting every penny. I was in the organic produce section debating between heirloom tomatoes and regular when I heard a familiar voice. Those are buy one, get one free. I turned to see my sister standing there in a grocery store. Uniform, name tag crooked on her chest. She'd lost weight, but not in a healthy way. Her face was drawn, her eyes had dark circles, her skin looked sallow. Madison, I said flatly. Jess? She looked at my cart, taking in the expensive cheeses, the organic vegetables, the bottle of wine that cost more than she probably made in a shift. You look good. Thanks. I work here now, started a few months ago. It's actually not bad. Health insurance, employee discount, pretty decent management. Good for you. An awkward silence stretched between us. Other shoppers flowed around us, oblivious to the years of bad blood. I'm getting married, Madison said suddenly. I waited. His name is Ryan. He's a manager at Target. We met when I was working there last year. She twisted a ring on her finger, cheap metal, probably turned her skin green. He's really nice, stable, kind. Congratulations. We're saving up for a small wedding, nothing fancy, just family and close friends, at the rec center. I nodded, still saying nothing. I thought maybe you might want to come. It's been so long and I know things ended badly, but you're my sister. I'd like you there. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, I felt something crack in my chest. The little girl who'd wanted a sister to love her. The teenager who'd wanted a family that saw her value. The young woman who'd wanted to believe that blood meant something. Then I remembered dying alone in a studio apartment, drowning in her debt. No, I said. Her face fell. Just like that? No? Just like that. Why, I know we haven't talked in years, but I'm trying here. I'm reaching out. I'm being the bigger person and inviting you even though you abandoned us when we needed you most. I laughed. Actually laughed right there in the Whole Foods produce section. I abandoned you? I repeated. That's how you're framing this? You refused to help when I needed you. I refused to co-sign $200,000 in student loans that you had no intention of paying back. That's not abandonment. That's self-preservation. How was I supposed to know I wouldn't be able to afford the payments? By doing basic math. My voice was rising now. Other shoppers were definitely staring. $200,000 at 7.5% interest is $2,800 a month. That requires an income of over $60,000 a year to afford comfortably. Did you have a plan to make $60,000 right out of college? I thought I'd get a good job with a 2.8 GPA and no relevant experience from a school you barely passed. She flinched. I had other qualities. You had a sense of entitlement and a trust fund mentality without the trust fund. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You know what the really funny part is, Madison? In another life, I did sign those papers. I did help. I spent 15 years paying off your debt while you lived your best life and never had contributed a dime. And when I finally confronted you about it, you know what you said? She was pale now, shaking her head. You said you should have read the fine print. Like it was my fault for trusting you, my fault for believing family meant something. I picked up a tomato, examining it like it was the most interesting thing in the world. So, I want you to really understand this. I'm not coming to your wedding. I'm not interested in rebuilding a relationship. I'm not your sister anymore because you stopped being mine the moment you let our parents disown me without a word of protest. That's not fair. Fair would have been you getting a job after graduation and making your loan payments. Fair would have been you acknowledging that mom and dad treated us differently and trying to make it right. Fair would have been you reaching out in the 12 years since I left. Not because you wanted something, but because you actually gave a shit about me. I put the tomato in my bag, but you didn't. You don't. You won't. So, no, Madison, I'm not coming to your wedding. Have a nice life. I walked away, leaving her standing there among the organic vegetables, and I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The wedding happened without me, obviously. Reese went and reported back. It was nice, she said. Small. Madison looked happy. Your parents looked old. Good for them. They asked about you. What did you tell them? That you were doing well, that you weren't interested in reconnecting. Reese paused. Your mom cried. She's good at that. Jess, I don't want to hear it, Reese. I know you think I'm being unreasonable. I know you think family is sacred and I should forgive and forget. But you weren't there. You didn't live what I lived. I'm just saying, and I'm just done. I stood up from the coffee shop table we'd been sitting at. I love you, Reese. You're my best friend, and you've stuck by me through everything. But if you're going to keep pressuring me to reconcile with people who treated me like garbage, we're going to have a problem. She held up her hands in surrender. Okay, I'll stop, I promise. I sat back down. Thank you. We never talked about my family again. Madison had a baby when I was 35. A girl, according to the birth announcement Reese accidentally showed me on Facebook before quickly switching to another screen. I felt nothing. No curiosity about my niece, no urge to send a gift, no instinct toward family reconciliation, just nothing. That same year, I quit my day job. My rental income plus my investment returns were more than enough to live on comfortably. I was financially independent at 35, 3 years younger than when I died in my first life. I spent the next year traveling, Europe, Asia, South America, all the places I'd never been able to afford before. I posted pictures on Instagram, not to make anyone jealous, but because I wanted to document my life, my real life, the one I'd built from scratch. Sometimes I wondered if Madison saw them, if she scrolled through photos of me in Paris, in Tokyo, in Machu Picchu, and felt anything. Probably not. She was likely too busy with her baby and her Target manager husband and her grocery store job to think about the sister who'd gotten away. I was 38 when I got the letter. It came to my current address, a beautiful Victorian house I'd bought and renovated in the best neighborhood in the city. How they found me, I wasn't sure. Maybe Reese had let it slip. Maybe they'd hired someone. Maybe it was just inevitable in a small city. The handwriting was Madison's, loopy and immature looking. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity got the better of me. Dear Jess, I know we haven't spoken in years. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm writing because I'm going to be a mother of 2 soon. I'm pregnant again. And it's made me think about family and legacy and what we pass down to our children. I was wrong. About everything. About thinking you owed me anything. About blaming you for consequences I created. About treating you like you were the selfish one when really it was me all along. I spent my 20s bitter and angry, convinced you'd ruined my life by not helping me. But the truth is, I ruined my own life by making choices I wasn't prepared to deal with the consequences of. I went to an expensive school I couldn't afford. I didn't take it seriously. I expected other people to fix my mistakes. And when they couldn't, I blamed them instead of looking in the mirror. I'm not writing to ask for money or help. I know that bridge is burned. I'm writing because my daughter deserves to know she has an aunt. A successful, brilliant aunt who could teach her things about strength and boundaries and self-worth that I clearly never learned. I've been in therapy for the past year, working through a lot of stuff about our childhood and our family dynamics. My therapist helped me see how mom and dad's favoritism damaged both of us. You by making you feel worthless, me by making me feel entitled. Neither of those things were fair or healthy. I can't undo the past. I can't give you back the years we lost or the relationship we could have had, but I can acknowledge that I was wrong, that I hurt you, and that you had every right to walk away. If you ever want to meet your niece, you know where to find me. And if you don't, I understand that too. You owe me nothing. You never did. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. Madison, I read the letter 3 times. Then I filed it in a folder in my desk labeled Family and went back to planning my trip to Santorini. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe when the kids were 18 and able to make their own choices about family relationships, I'd introduce myself. Or maybe I wouldn't. The beautiful thing about this life, the one I chose, the one I built from the ashes of the first, is that I get to decide. I get to decide who deserves my time, my energy, my love. I get to decide what family means and who earns that title. I get to decide when to forgive and when to walk away. They took that power from me once with their guilt and manipulation and conditional love. I took it back, and I'm never giving it up again. I'm 42 now in this life, 58 in total years lived if you count the first time through. I own 32 rental properties worth a combined $8 million. I travel 6 months out of the year. I volunteer with financial literacy programs, teaching young women how to protect their credit and recognize family manipulation. I have friends, real ones, who value me for who I am rather than what I can provide. I date casually. There's a nice man named David I've been seeing for a few months, though nothing serious yet. I'm happy, genuinely, selfishly happy. My parents are still alive, still struggling. Financially, still living in that cramped apartment. They're 74 and 75 now, faces lined with bitterness and hardship. Madison is still married to her Target manager. She has 3 kids now. I know because Reese occasionally mentions them. She's working part-time at a call center while Ryan works full-time at Target. They're making it work, barely, living paycheck to paycheck in a modest house in a not great neighborhood. Her student loans are still in default. They'll follow her for the rest of her life, garnishing wages and ruining credit and making everything harder. Sometimes I think about reaching out, offering some small olive branch, acknowledging Madison's letter at least. But then I remember my 38th birthday in my first life, the pills, the collections notices, the absolute rock bottom of despair. And I remember that I didn't fail them. They failed me first. The difference is I can live with my choice. They have to live with theirs. And you know what? That's exactly as it should be. Last month, I received another letter, this time from my father. Jessica, I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months. I don't expect you to care. I don't expect you to visit. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. For choosing Madison over you, for threatening to disown you, for not being the father you deserved. You were right to leave. You were right to refuse. You were right about all of it. I'm proud of what you've built. Reese shows your mom pictures sometimes from your social media. We see you traveling, succeeding, thriving. We know you own a lot of property and that you're doing well. I'm glad. Truly. I'm glad that our mistakes didn't destroy you like they almost did. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what I was too blind to see before. You were always the strong one. Dad, I read it once. Then I put it in the folder with Madison's letter and went to my Pilates class. He died 4 months later. Reese called to tell me. The funeral is Saturday, she said. I know you probably won't come, but I thought you should know. Thanks for telling me. Are you okay? I'm fine. And I was. No grief, no regret, no last-minute urge to make peace. Just nothing. I sent flowers to the funeral home, expensive ones, the kind that made a statement. The card read, "In memory of what could have been." I didn't go to the service. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer. Apparently, my father had left me something in his will. I almost didn't take the meeting, but curiosity won out again. The lawyer's office was nice, downtown in one of the buildings I owned shares in. The irony wasn't lost on me. Your father's estate is quite small, the lawyer explained, sliding papers across her desk. After debts and expenses, there's essentially nothing to divide. However, he did leave you this. She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a single photograph, me and Madison as children, maybe 7 and 4, grinning at the camera with gap-toothed smiles. We were wearing matching dresses, holding hands, looking like we loved each other. On the back, in my father's handwriting, "I'm sorry I let this die. I hope you aren't." I stared at the photo for a long time, looking at the little girl I'd been. The one who'd believed in family, who'd trusted that love was unconditional, who'd thought her parents would protect her. She'd been wrong about all of that, but she'd survived. I slipped the photo into my wallet and walked out of the lawyer's office. Maybe someday I'd reach out to Madison. Maybe I'd meet my nieces and nephews. Maybe I'd try to build something new from the ruins of what we'd been. Or maybe I wouldn't. The choice was mine. And that freedom to choose, that power to decide my own life without guilt or obligation or manipulation, that was worth more than any inheritance, any reconciliation, any family tie could ever be. I'd died once under the weight of their expectations. I'd been reborn into a life of my own making, and I was never, ever going back. I'm sitting in my home office now, looking out the window at my perfectly manicured garden, thinking about everything that's happened. Two lives lived, two completely different outcomes. In my first life, I said yes. I sacrificed everything. I destroyed myself trying to save them, and I died alone, broke and broken. In this life, I said no. I chose myself. I built something beautiful, and I'm alive, wealthy, and whole. The funny thing is, they ended up in roughly the same place either way. Poor, struggling, drowning in debt. My sacrifice in the first life didn't save them. It just pulled me down with them. At least this time, I'm still standing. My phone buzzes. A text from David. Dinner tonight? That new Italian place? I smile and text back. Sounds perfect. I have a date, life, a future. And I have zero regrets about the family I left behind. They made their choices. I made mine. And unlike them, I'm living with the consequences of a choice that actually worked out. Some people might call that cold. I call it justice.